Good afternoon, everyone. It's Friday afternoon. It's just after 3 p.m. In the UK. What else can that mean but the PMI Friday webinar? You are most welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Rich Seddon, and I'll be facilitating the session today, which is Developing Your Eye for Innovation with my colleague, Sean Buckland. This is a first for me to be Sean's wingman, so hopefully we'll do a good job of this together. We will be doing some, as you would expect, taking an innovative approach this afternoon. We'll give you plenty of warning, but today's webinar, which is the first, is going to be a little bit more interactive than normal, and we'll share the details of that later on. That'll be available for those of you who are joining us as registered users in the Zoom webinar itself. For those joining us on the live streams, Facebook and LinkedIn, you are very welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. You won't be able to participate in the interactive session, but you will be able to see it on the screen, and Sean will share his screen and broadcast that live later on as we use the interactive live whiteboard. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we'll send all registered participants a link early next week to the recording. So there's no need to capture screenshots or anything like that during the session. You'll get a full copy of the audio and the screens later on. As usual, we'll send everyone a short voice to the customer survey. We'd be really grateful if you could take a few moments to complete that for us. We do use that to inform us how we're doing, and second, to advise us on topics you'd like to see in the future schedules. So that's it from me at the moment. Thank you again for joining us, and I'd like to hand over to Sean.
Thank you very much, Rich. So welcome everybody, and welcome to Developing Your Eye for Innovation. And just a little introduction to myself first of all. So I'm a Lean Six Sigma practitioner and have been for 16 years. Prior to that, I spent 15 years as an organizational psychologist. But over the years of doing both organizational psychology and the Lean Six Sigma, one of the things that's always fascinated me is how do you solve the problems that can't be solved? And that's led me through into innovation, understanding theory of innovation, and how to apply lean into startup situations, and so on. So today I want to just share a few little insights that we've managed to pick up along the way that have had a very large impact on the work that we've been involved in. And hopefully that can be useful for you. So I appreciate that many, if not all of the audience here are already involved in some form of organizational improvement work. So we want to also cover a little bit of the linkage between innovation and the world of Lean Six Sigma, so that you know how to blend and where to differentiate. So we've got a lot to cover today, deciding if you need to innovate or whether improvement's enough, how the two things differ from each other, and of course, we want to give you some practical hands-on experience of a really useful, one of many, but a very useful tool to get you started on your innovation journey. So the interesting thing that we always face, though, when we start down this conversation of innovation, very quickly we can find we've all got different definitions and terms of what innovation really means. So we're going to start off straight away with a poll. And I've did some research recently to try and identify different definitions of innovation. And eventually I just stopped because I was finding so many. So we've given you 6 here on the poll. The first, implementation of an invention, a way of satisfying unmet customer needs. Innovation is equal to creativity times risk-taking. Act of introducing something new. Innovation is creativity plus commercialization, or a successful step change. We'd like to know which one of these you think, no doubt you've got your own as well, but which one of these do you think is the best definition of the 6 I've given you? However, if you've got a real favorite one, by all means, post it in the chat. We'd love to know.
Yeah, so if there's something we haven't covered within these definitions, do let us know, as Sean says. Take a few moments to read these. It took me a while when I first saw them to absorb the differences. So I'll try and keep quiet and not distract you and yap away as you're trying to make your decisions. So we'll just give you a couple of moments to have a look at that. I've talked myself into a deathly silence now, haven't I, Sean? There's much thinking is going on.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because at the moment we see on the leaderboard, what I'm seeing is, well, I can't possibly say because that would influence.
Yes, hold that thought.
But what I can say is there's one leader and a couple are struggling to get off the starting mark. So yeah, so I think this is proving the point very nicely. Let's see what happens when we close it down.
I can just see several of you are taking some time to do that. So let's give you 10 more seconds and then we'll close the poll and have a look at the results. Oh, so some last joiners there jumping in. And okay, I'm going to close that now. So Sean, just before I share those results, what was the process like of identifying these, and how did you, when you came to select these, why these ones?
Okay, fantastic. So process itself was quite difficult because Google being the amazing thing that it is now, you type in the word innovation and you'll get absolutely inundated. So one of the things I was looking for is people who had published, they were published authors, and had taken the time to research the innovation literature. So that was one of the things that was interesting to me, is was there any basis rather than it just being somebody's words attached to their gut instinct? So all of these are published definitions and in the literature, and behind those things the thinking that's gone into them. And I think our poll results absolutely illustrate precisely what the problem is. In fact, we you know, if we ran this for a bit longer, we could have got any other result, couldn't we? So we've got a clear leader, the act of introducing something new.
I'll share those on screen now.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I hadn't realised they weren't sharing it. So brilliant. So yeah, so our clear leader with 43% of the vote was the act of introducing something new. But all of the others, except for a way of satisfying unmet customer need. But it's interesting, we'll come on to that later on, and hopefully you'll see by the end of this presentation that all of these definitions have got merit. But when you're discussing innovation with people and discussing the process of innovation you're going to use, please take the time to make sure you're all talking about the same thing. So it kind of doesn't matter which definition you use, just make sure you have one that you share.
And just an interesting comment in the on the Q&A desk as well here, Sean, saying innovate number. I'm referring to answer number 5. It could be also rephrased as innovation equals creativity plus implementation. Is another take on it.
Yes. And that one, interestingly, ties it very, very, very closely to the 6th one, the successful step change. Because successful step change implies we needed to have made a jump from A to B in a way that is meaningful and lasting. And we'll come on to that in a lot of detail in a few moments' time. So thank you very much for all of your answers and your comments. Do keep them coming, and they're very valuable, and they help us develop our thinking as well as giving you a chance to influence the things we say, which of course is very helpful. So let's move on. Close that down. Right. There we go. So, okay. So number 1, do you actually need to innovate? Well, we've got this concept I want to introduce you to, the S-curve. And the idea here is that your system, and by system, I mean the system of processes and technology and people and knowledge and experience that you have around you, is at a given point in maturity. I'm not just talking technology system here. I'll use the word system a lot today, but I'm talking about the whole system around and system of processes that you have that you're working within. And the crucial thing about this is they evolve over time. They can get stronger, they can get weaker, they're like living beings. But on the whole, this is what happens, is the value that any given set of processes or value streams or et cetera, all the language we use, the value that we deliver over time tends to follow this journey. So we have the initial conception of the idea, we birth it and test it out, get some first customers, and then it goes through its infancy and its growth phase and into maturity, its adult life, which is where it becomes a well-known and well-understood product or something like that. And ultimately, it has a retirement phase as well, where there's still value, but the crucial thing for this is it starts reaching its limit, its system limit. So all systems have fundamental limits. This is unavoidable and it's always true. So again, here's our S-curve, our current system. And here is a picture that describes what its current system potential is. Now, what that red line is that I've just drawn on there for you, what it's saying is even if you were to improve everything as far as it could possibly be improved using standard improvement methods, so we've literally got full control of all the sorts of variation and so on and so forth, eventually it still cannot go any faster. It cannot deliver any more that, within that current boundary of that system. And then what happens is the voice of the customer. Now, it's quite likely to be a future customer, but back to that one on the poll that was unmet, nobody selected, but this is where the unmet need comes in. There may already be a customer out there who wants something completely different, but it simply isn't available yet. So that's where the voice of the unmet need bit of the definition comes in. But if not now, at some point in the future, your customers may want more than your current systems of processes are capable of delivering. And if that's the case, then innovation is required. And so this is one of the things to try and understand is if everything was as perfect as you could possibly get it, is that going to be sufficient for the future? And of course, you've got to do a bit of viewing into the future, and we'll talk about that later. So when's the best time to do that innovation? And hence why do we observe our own current maturity? In fact, the opportunity is best served because of that early conception, birth, infancy period. The investment window is while your current systems are operating at their most sort of mature and adult version. Don't wait for them to start to struggle at the themes, because that's the point where margins will be beginning to get tighter, competition will be pressing in on you. That's the hardest time to be innovating, because you're feeling pressured and stressed by the outside forces. But of course, the problem is we're all human beings. When are we least likely to step out of our comfort zone? When are we least likely to take some risks? It's when we're most comfortable. And therefore, it's an interesting thought for you. How comfortable are you with your current performance? The more comfortable you are, the more likely it is that now is the time to innovate. Just an interesting thought for you to play with. Please come back to me whether you agree or disagree in the columns, in the chat. I'd love to know what your thoughts on that are. So let's develop this some further. Ideality. Ideality is made up of three lenses that we can use to look at our current system and its maturity. And that is the amount of benefit or the amount of value that it is able to deliver and how well that meets the customer need. But that is offset with the amount of cost associated with delivering it and the amount of harm that delivers it. Now, again, I haven't had a moment to look this up because I'm very bad at remembering names. But about a week and a half ago, I was reading a really interesting article, and it was the question that had been posed was, who has been the most evil, destructive human being in the history of humankind? And I'm sure you can all think of some names that jump straight to mind from your own experience in your own part of the world, wherever it is you are. However, the interesting answer that came through was an engineer, an automotive engineer. And he was the person who was solving the problem of, in the old days, when, of combustion engine cars, there was this problem called knocking. And I'm not going to go into the detail of that. You either know what it means or you don't, that's fine. But the point was there was a problem with petrol engines. And he found the way to solve it was to put lead into the petrol. And then for years afterwards, decades afterwards, we had leaded petrol, and some bits of the world still do. And what that is doing is spreading a really nasty toxin into our atmosphere that has led to untold harm and early deaths and so forth. And now we've had to find ways to take it back out again and solve the problem better. So moving from lead to whatever it is we do now, I'm not an expert on these things, is more of the benefit, or at least the same benefit, and with less of the harm. And of course, less cost because we're not having to put the lead into it. So that's what we mean by that. Just out of aside, this guy, his next invention, went on to put CFCs into refrigerated units and nearly managed to destroy the ozone layer, which we've only just about recovered from. So this guy was extremely harmful because his innovations are only focused on the benefit to the problem he was trying to solve, not thinking about the cost and the harm. And innovation is focused on ideality. How do we get more of the benefit for less of the harm, less of the cost? So we want to improve our ideality by increasing the benefits, as I've just said, and reducing the costs and reducing the harm. We just have to remember that when we come up with our new ideas, they are necessarily going to be inefficient. And one of the problems that large organizations have when they're trying to keep innovative is they want to treat maybe the incubator unit and measure it using standard measures of efficiency and productivity and all of those things were actually responsible, the mature world, the adult world. We don't need those. We need different measures. And again, fantastic stuff in the lean startup movement for you to be able to understand what the appropriate measures there might be. Then at the other end is when the mature system has reached its mature point, what you'll see happening, and particularly those of you involved in organization improvement work, is you will start seeing the contradictions beginning to take over. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that I want something to go faster, but in order to make it go faster, I have some unintended consequence somewhere else, and that gets worse, and I just cannot get the system to get any better. So every time I make one thing better, something else gets worse. And this is the contradiction, or set of contradictions. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Genrich Altschuler, I'm just trying to remember his name there, and TRIZ methodology. And within TRIZ methodology, it's about how to explore and understand those contradictions and get past them. But that's a crucial thing for you. If you're involved in improvement work, Lean Six Sigma type improvement work, and you're finding that you just can't get the system to perform better because of these contradictions, it's a sign that you're reaching the end of that particular system's lifespan, and it's time to innovate. Okay. It's very easy for people to see innovation as this big, huge thing. We're going to invent the new way to travel to Mars. We're going to find a way to clean all of the plastics out of the ocean. These are, of course, really beautiful, big, impressive things and very newsworthy. But don't forget that every single process step along your value chains that you've got in work, and as you go along, you've got process steps which are supported by process technology. And that process technology itself, you can innovate within. So you might be able to generate a significant step change in the entire system's capability by finding the bottleneck, not in terms of the bottleneck in the flow, but the bottleneck in the capacity or the capability of the system. And the two may often be in the same location. So think about not just about big innovation, also there might be a single step in the process that if you can innovate in that one place, may transform the entire value stream's ability to deliver to the customer. And I would lay money, I really would, that if I came and saw, for those of you who've involved in this type of work on a daily basis or have got substantial experience, I would say that if I came and looked with you at your previous work, I bet I would find sources of innovation. Every time you've achieved a step change in process performance, I suspect you have applied innovation principles in order to achieve that. Again, in the comments, if you've got any examples of that we can share, absolutely great to do that. If you agree with me, disagree with me, just let me know. Fantastic. Okay, so Rich.
Sean, be careful what you wish for, because you might just get
it. Let's hear it.
So we've got a biggie for you. It's actually related to your previous slide. Sean, in your narrative, you've talked about improvement being finite. How does that square with the concept of continuous and continual improvement?
Yeah, thank you. That is a great question. I'm just going to slide back a slide. So what this is saying is improvement methodology will get us to a point that is still limited by the system. Yeah, and eventually we get these diminishing returns, and if we want to achieve a step change in the performance from the point of view of creating value or reducing cost and harm, we then need to shift to an innovation methodology rather than an improvement methodology. After which, as you'll see in a few moments' time, we get back into improvement mode again.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic. And the second one, second point, comment from Mark, related to your next slide. And it's as follows. In my industry, often our innovation efforts are encouraged because of global initiatives, global warming, plastics in our oceans, etc., as well as adding more value for existing and new customers. Now, for context, Sean, Mark is in the building materials and construction industry.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. Yeah, and this absolutely fantastic example. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, so here's an interesting thing. Again, I mentioned I was a psychologist, and I still am. It doesn't leave me the importance of the people in all of this. I recognise there's some interesting challenges in this. So we want to look to the future, because being good at what you do now is not enough in the long run. So one of my favorite chaps, Russell Ackoff, a fantastic systems thinker, management F-law number 116, organizations fail more often because of what they have not done than because of what they have done. And that's a really interesting thing, particularly if you're finding challenges from your management team. Obviously, Mark's in a situation where there's a lot of external pressure for us to improve and to innovate, which is great, but not all industries are the same. So if you are finding that pressure, it's useful to share that with your team. And again, I wanted to look into the detail of this. That's Russell Ackoff's opinion. So I went back into the literature and looked at the principles of regret. And it's some fascinating research done. And what we found out is that if we take an action that doesn't work out the way we wanted to it, of course that leads to regret. Yeah. But only in the short term. Interestingly, it's when we don't take action, the level of regret in the long run, if we didn't take action and wished we had, is the bigger pain. So this is a really, really interesting thing. Take action, get it wrong, small pain. Don't take action, get it wrong, big pain. So that's just an interesting thing to think about from a psychology point of view. Okay, so we've already started touching on this thanks to some of the excellent questions that are coming in. And I'm just going to take a very specific angle on this question about how innovation differs from improvement. And I would like you to introduce you, maybe not all of you, some of you might have come across this already, but if not, I'd like to introduce you to the Conevin decision-making framework. Now, I hope for those of you Welsh speakers in the audience, I've said that correctly. The concept of Conevin, I'm not going to try and translate from Welsh. I'm not a Welsh speaker, but it's ultimately it's about the centering and your place where you are in the system at a given moment in time.
We have quite a few people joining us from Myanmar, Sean, this afternoon, so I'm sure they'll be fine with the Welsh.
Okay, super then. Yes. Okay. It's a very early morning, I suspect, in Myanmar by now. But anyway, so the thing is here is this is a decision-making framework. So I want you to think of it not as a classic consulting 2x2 grid, although it does look like that to begin with, but as a tool that you can actually use to say, what approach should I be taking given where I am right now? So let me take you through it very, very quickly indeed. So number one, we have the simple space and the simple ordered space. So this is where our current system is, everything is working exactly as it should. It's what us Lean Six Sigma people dream of as an end state. You know, all the common cause variation is nice and tight, fully capable processes. Everything happens exactly as expected in a fully predictable way. So if something does happen, the relationship between cause and effect is very, very predictable, and we can predict it in advance, and that cause and effect relationship is very self-evident to any reasonable person. Just the same as I go to switch on the light switch, I press down the button, the light switches on. That's a simple cause and effect relationship. Okay. The next one on is where there is a complicated but still ordered system. And here there is a relationship between cause and effect. It's even a predictable one in advance, but it's not self-evident. In other words, we need expertise. This is where we can get the machine to work. We can get the sale to cross the line, but only if we've got the best engineer on it. Only if we've got the best sales lead on it. only if we've got somebody who understands the detail of how the work has been coded in the back office of the database, and so on. So that's where it's complicated and we're relying on expertise, or we're relying on analysis processes like a Six Sigma project in order to establish the cause and effect. Right, now we get into the complex. The complex here is the relationship between cause and effect is not knowable in advance. And because of that, the outcomes are unpredictable. So it doesn't matter how good you are at your Lean Six Sigma, we can't make effective predictions in advance. You know, we just don't know. If we get 10 experts in the room, we'll get 10 different answers as to what the what's going on, and so on. Politics, the world of politics lives in this space. Battlefield commanders have to live in this space. It's the complex space, and it's a tricky one. And then the realm of chaos. Chaos is where there is no stability. There is no knowable cause and effect, largely because there isn't time to look into it. You've got the state of chaos requires you to do something about it pretty quickly. And there's two different ways we can be in the space of chaos. Number one is we accidentally fell into it because of a fire, metaphorical or real, caused a massive disruption, and we had to go and fight the fire. Or we can deliberately choose to enter the chaos space and use it to create innovation. So we go into the world where nothing is known. We have no knowable cause and effect, and we want to create a new world, a new opportunity, a new source of value from that doesn't currently exist. And that's the realm of chaos. So there are different strategies, depending on which space we're in, we've got different strategies available to us. So in simple ordered, we're looking to apply best practice. We want to sense what's happening around, categorize the situation according to already known situations, and make the correct response. And this is very smooth, and this is exactly what bureaucracy, if done properly, is meant to achieve. We all know exactly what to do because we've got the right templates, the right training, everything is in the right place, and we can act accordingly. In the complicated space, we're looking to apply good practice because best practice is not yet knowable. So to do that, we sense what's going on, take the analysis type to do the analysis, and then respond in the best way we can discover. So your typical yellow, green belt type work, Kaizen events, and so on and so forth. We all know the DMAIC cycle probably, you know, this is what it's trying to do. It's trying to run that approach. And then we work backwards into the complex space. And the complex space is interesting, and it, again, if any of you've looked into Lean Startup, it really focuses in on this stuff a lot. But also, if you're following the full Plan, Do, Study, Act as trained by Deming, process, then you're in the concept of safe fail experiments. And not fail safe, because obviously that means we've already fixed all the problems, but safe fail. We expect to fail, but we find a safe place and a safe way to do those experiments. And then the stuff that we like, we amplify. The stuff that we don't like, we reduce. And we move, and over time, we get to being able to respond in an emergent practice. In other words, we move it from complex to complicated. And so the strategy here: probe first, sense the reaction, respond accordingly. And then finally into the chaos space, everything is new. We just need to acknowledge it's new. We can't treat it in the same way as a standard daily operation. So we just need to act on the system in the best way we can imagine, sense what happened, and then work out how to deal with that. So there's a lot more you can learn about this. And at the bottom of this sheet, I've got the link to Dave Snowden's very excellent presentation where he goes through this in more detail, and I do recommend it to you. Okay, so I'm just going to cover one more thing about this in terms of the link between innovation and improvement. Because here's the thing: every time anything happens that is not expected, it puts us into, maybe only for a very short second of time, but it puts us into a state of disorder. And when we're in that state of disorder, we're vulnerable, we're at risk. And it's that temptation to just rush off and do something. Don't just stand there, do something, etc. But what we're recommending is you use this as a decision-making framework. What is the current state of our operation? Is it simple ordered, complicated ordered, complex, or chaos? And from that, we can choose a better strategy in order to react. And sometimes the strategy will be an improvement, just a straight act on the system strategy. Sometimes it will be an improvement strategy. Sometimes it'll be an innovation strategy. So what we want to do is seek to find innovative ways to transform our system. So whether we're in a state of chaos, what we want to do is become innovative in ways that allows us to contain the chaos into a predictable system. We may not be able to do much other than retrospective root cause analysis, but at least we've got it contained. So all of those special causes are now beginning to stabilize out and so forth. We've contained that. And that may require us to think very creatively and innovatively to do that. Our world may be complex, but if we seek to understand, we take the time to understand what are the contradictions in the current system, what are causing the limitations, etc., and we can then apply some methodologies like TRIZ, for example, then we can innovate our way through from complex into complicated. And then back into the realm of very traditional Six Sigma type, finish the domainic process, we're into that control phase, looking to standardize. This is not so much the innovation space anymore, this is very much more about how do you get people to accept and take on board, because we've gone through that process of simplification so that people they no longer have to be the expert. So you can see that there is interesting opportunities for innovation, in the chaos space, the complex space, and even in the complicated ordered space. And so back to what I said earlier, what you're looking for is whether or not your current system can cope with, it can achieve the level you need it to. But I'm just going to make an interesting point here, and it's this thing called the cliff. And it says, and the moral of the story here is stay away from the cliff. It's a dangerous, dangerous place. Because if you get your system so organized, so simple, so able to operate in a very, very straightforward way, it means that you're assuming the environment will always stay identical. And in practice, any major shock to the environment around that system, like a big shock in demand, COVID, for example, or closing of borders, restriction of trades, all these kind of things that can happen in the world, if you've got everything totally simple and ordered, it will fall straight into chaos. And it's a very difficult place to manage. It's a very difficult problem to deal with. So ironically, for those being Six Sigma professionals on the call, we often want to get to that simple ordered as the pinnacle of performance. But just bear in mind, it's also that simple ordered is a very, very high risk environment. So back to my earlier point, when is the right time to move into innovation space? Well, it's when you're beginning to get that simple and ordered. Yeah, so deliberately create some safe space to go and have some chaos. And that's a great time because it's no longer the system forcing you to act, it's you choosing to act. Okay, well, hopefully that's been interesting. Like I say, recommend Dave Soden's video and other material on the Conevin model to you. But we've promised you some innovation of our own. So we are trialing something today, and we want to trial some interaction with you around a tool called the 9 Windows. And the 9 Windows tool is a really, really useful tool to help you get started on your innovation journeys. So you may have identified you need to do some innovation, but where to get started. And this is a great thing to help you. So the purpose of 9 Windows is to help you get your systems, the way you're looking, the problem that you're looking at, into a wider context. You're looking not just through one window, which is what can I see about my problem or my opportunity, which is here in the middle. What I'm actually doing is I want to be able to look in a variety of places. And the middle piece is simply the system I'm looking at, where I am now. But I can also look up I can look around myself. What is it around the problem or the opportunity? I can then look into it in terms of the detail. What are the components that are making up that system, and which ones of those are of interest? I could look to the past. Where did things start from? And future, where could they possibly go? So these are the windows, and again, you can make this many more windows than 9 windows. You know, you could get it up to thousands of windows if you wanted to, by slicing the definition of the past, slicing the definition of the future, slicing the definition of around and within, all the way down to microbiological or micro particle levels, up to global or universal. So there's all of these different levels of detail you can go into, but we're just going to keep it simple today. So here's a very quick example. Let's imagine we're in the automotive industry and we want to do something innovative in that space. And somehow we can then think about the automotive industry. Part of the system of the automotive industry is, for example, service stations. That's part of the system that enables the automotive industry to work. And you could put many other things in this same place. Likewise, the car, one of the components within the car system is the fuel that it needs. So that's a sort of looking within the system. And we could look back in past. How did we used to travel around? We could look to the future. Sorry, I'm still on the past. How was the system, in this case I've used the fuel station, so how did we used to service our vehicles? And of course it was the stable block, it was the precursor of that. And then what was the fuel system? Well, grasses and hays and so forth. And then looking to the future, what might our vehicle of the future look like? What might the service station of the future look like? We can think about that. All of these are just guesses, of course. You don't know. The future doesn't yet exist. And what does the fuel management system? I've stolen this from Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future, if any of you have seen that rather excellent 1980s film. So, but then once we've done all of this, it opens up a whole lot of questions. Do I actually want to focus on the vehicle, or within the system, for example, the fuel system, or go up a level and maybe look at the system around it? Where is the best future for me and my organization? Which of these is going to be the most interesting to innovate within? And you can also then use your 9 windows to look for trends. So you'll notice that one of the things about the car system and the way I've drawn it there is it's still derived around transporting relatively few numbers of individuals. It's thank you. And so what we're looking for is what's the storyline here? So the vehicle is about me being able to get places faster, more conveniently. And therefore, the question I can answer myself is, how do I improve on speed and convenience? It helps me define the thing that is a constant over time in terms of the definition of value. Upper system, the stables, look at those. All 3 of them actually look an awful lot like stables. So therefore, we've got this theme that we know the concept of the stable works well over time. So you've either got the ambitious, super ambitious innovation, which is to break away from the stable concept, or to say, what is the stable of the future? And you get the idea. The bottom one, the theme is organics. We've just changed the definition of organics. What are we turning into fuel in that example? So it's a really interesting tool, very powerful. You can spend 1 minute or 10 minutes or 2 days or 2 hours, you know, all these different, you know, just take the time you've got. So we're going to run our experiment now. We're going to see if you can have a go at one. All together, working together. Unfortunately, if you're on the Facebook and the LinkedIn, we can't share the link into that environment just yet. But I will be screen sharing, so you can at least watch what the people are registered to do. But of course, our recommendation would be register, so you can join in next time.
Oh, look at that, plugging the registration there, Sean. Like it very
much.
Your Back to the Future reference is going down well as well. So, folks, I'm very mindful that Sean has been in the Conevin model been talking a lot about chaos. Now, we're hoping not to go down the chaos line just now. Bear with us. This is innovation in action. We have never done this in a webinar before, so we're going to give this a whirl. So, what's going to happen shortly? Sean will describe the process to you.
We're going into a safe fail, because if this fails, fails, we're only going to lose a few minutes, so that's great. So Rich is very kindly going to put a link into the chat. Are you able to do that for me, Rich?
I am doing that right now, just removing the bullet point that's come with it. There we go.
Password as well.
Yes, password
now,
coming.
Just don't follow the link just yet. Bear with me, stay with me. So what I'm going to do is I've put a problem statement into the middle box of the window, the system now box. And what we need you to do is go into the Miro board, and you'll see there's lots of post-it notes already prepared for you. So just click on one to select it, and or you can make a new one if you need to, if we run out. And to make a new one, just type, excuse me, shortcut N for a note, and then left click where you want it, and it'll create you a new note. And then on the note, when you select it, you can enter text into it. And what we want you to do is just let your brain do its thing. I want to see what you're thinking in reaction to the problem statement that I've put in the middle. And obviously you can do your own later with your own problem statement. So try and fill in. We want to see something in all of the 8 boxes around the middle. Okay.
So good news is, sorry, Sean. Good news is I've shared that with everyone. I can see people are getting in there.
Fantastic, good stuff. So a couple of quick tips. You select a sticky note by left clicking on it, and either pressing enter will allow you to enter the text, or if you double left click on it in the first place, you can enter text. If you need to resize a note, use the white handles in the corners, and you can drag it to different sizes. And when you finish typing on a note, please click away, because that then releases it from the lock. I'm going to change my share now, a new share, which is the Miro board, like so. And we can zoom in. And so the problem I've set for you is this, that is very COVID related. So we've got non-ergonomic home working environments. In other words, lots of people having to work from home now, but their homes are not designed as safe offices, and they're causing health problems. Yeah. So so back strain, eye strain, injuries, ironing boards falling on top of people, and so forth. So have a think about that from the wider system. Grab any one of these post-it notes and start writing what you can think of. So how did we get to this point in the past? What does the future of home working environments potentially look like? What are the situations? What's the system around home working environments? What are the elements of home working environments, and so on? So I'm just going to set a clock going for 5 minutes and some music on it. And we're going to see what happens. Off we go.
It's very serene, Sean. So just as a reminder, folks, up on the top left of the Miro board, you'll see the slide that Sean used with the images, just to remind you of the format of the 9-window system. It's just on the top left. Positively hypnotic trance. So folks, push the cat off the keyboard, get into the Miro board and set yourself free. Fill as many as you want. It's as ever with this kind of thing, it's quantity is what matters. Anyone joining with the live streams now will wonder what on earth is going on here. But we promised you innovation.
Yeah, good job so far, loving it. So remember to start typing on a post-it note, just double click on it or click once and hit enter. And Control Z, by the way, works fine if you make a mistake and you want to undo it.
Wonderful to see so many of you getting creative here. It's fantastic to see.
Here we go. Okay, we'll just give you a few more seconds to get a few more thoughts down, then we'll see what we've created. Okay, fantastic. So,
And awake.
like I say, this is an exercise that is ultimately unlimited. You need to make a decision about when it's most useful for you to stop. And as a team, you get a team together, like any of these exercises, you get the team together and you give it a good push, stop, reflect. What have we learned? Okay, is there anything else you want to add in the light of what we've learned? So you might be, and by the way, this is a common situation, you might be that at the end of your exercise, that you want to focus in on, quality of chair, for example. So you can then put that in the center and run a brand new 9 windows. So it allows you to shuffle along in exactly the same way I'm doing here on the screen. You can zoom in and set up your next 9 windows. But now if we look at this, so look at some fantastic opportunities that are emerging here. So we've got about the knowledge. We've got a theme around knowledge. So Pomodoro techniques versus less medical knowledge over time. The design of the house and so forth. The design of the space itself, moving it digital, virtually. Anti-grav office furniture, that's my kind of thinking. I love it. This is what we want. Super stuff, yeah. Brilliant. How the rooms are set up. But look, new builds have built-in offices. This is a thought, hang on a second. Wow, that's a whole new industry, that we're thinking about. So it's how do we turn a problem, COVID for having to homework, into new opportunities? Or we could stay at the same level, right? Okay, fantastic. How do we do the education piece? What's the insurance? Is there an insurance product here that we're missing out on, and so forth?
Loving retirement there as well, Sean.
Sorry, say again, Rich?
Loving retirement there as well as one of the
Yeah. Just retire, quit, solve the problem by not having to go to work. Yes. I think if we merge those two together, we go back to where we were in the 70s when we thought that by now everything was going to be done for us by computers. But there we go. So yeah, so ergonomics and the future houses. So think about furniture that is both home and office friendly. And that's a really interesting thought. So how, and this is exactly what businesses do. If they manage to open up new lines, they find spaces where they can go into. And so well done. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to stop that share and start a new one. Go back to my screen.
I think we got away with it without the chaos piece. So thank you very much to everyone for contributing that and making such a success of it. We were not unnervous.
Can I just check? Am I resharing the correct screen there, Rich?
You are, yes.
Fantastic. In that case, we'll just run very swiftly a poll. We'd like to, as this is an experiment, of course, we need data. So can we just reopen the polls and get
on screen
people
now
to quickly reply based on the options available?
Okay, fantastic. So 5 options here. I got on tomorrow and like the idea of interaction. I got on tomorrow, but don't think it adds to the webinar. I got on tomorrow, but couldn't use it when I got there. I couldn't get on tomorrow. I didn't try to get on tomorrow.
Okay. And as always, any further comments or feedback for us in the chat, please. Really, really useful to understand.
Okay. Fantastic. So it's interesting with this tool. It's this specifically. We're obviously using it across all of our virtual training courses, Sean. This is the first time we've tried it in a webinar, and one of the challenges why we're asking you this question is that we have kind of one-way dialogue in these, unlike training sessions where we've got two-way dialogue. So we're very interested to hear what that was like, and thank you. I can see you responding. So I'll knock that on the head and share the results. Okay.
Super.
I think we have a clear winner.
That is what we call some good confirmation evidence that we've got away with it. It means we might try something similar and see if we can get repeat. What did you say, Rich?
I think so. I think watch this coming to a webinar near you soon.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Thank you, everybody. We really, really appreciate your engagement in that. It's been super, super stuff. Okay, so wrapping up now, coming towards the end, I just want to finish on this section, and that is selecting where to focus. Now, I can't tell you where to focus. I can't tell you whether to do innovation or to do improvement. I've hopefully given you some things to think about to help you choose which is the appropriate one. And if you do choose to innovate, there's some key questions for you to think about. The number one is how ambitious are you? The bigger the innovation, the bigger the step change, clearly the more ambitious you need to be, and the people around you, if you're not on your own with this. And as a result of that ambition, are you prepared to develop new core competencies? If you're being highly ambitious, you're going to be facing a lot of new core competencies that you'll need to develop. If you're just being mildly ambitious, just maybe innovating within one process step, for example, then your core competencies may not even change fundamentally at all. But by definition, because of the innovation process, there will still be new learning. That will always be there. Are you prepared to test your way to success? The initial point of innovation is one of chaos. From disorder, we don't even know what question we want to answer, through to chaos, we have no idea how to act on the system. So we just got to do something. The 9 Windows tool is a great first thing to do something. Okay. And then if you decide to do something that is fundamentally different to your traditional trajectory, your traditional value stream, so maybe you make cars and you want to get into providing the service stations, the stables, that's a fundamental shift and obviously has important consequences. So if your core competencies for where you want to get to are quite different to your existing, and that includes your brand, not just your processes, do you have the knowledge or the connections, the network, etc., to help you along your way? Because otherwise you've got to learn everything from scratch, and obviously that's quite challenging. But most important of all, have you chosen something that you're so excited about that you can't get to sleep because you're thinking about it, or you wake up thinking about it? Yeah, it's got innovation is hard work. It's energy because because there's no order. You're fighting against that chaos. So just be aware that you need to generate that energy from within. And I obviously that will help you. The thing that you're most excited about is probably a good place to focus. So those are my thoughts on developing an eye for innovation. I've taken you all the way through from do you need to innovate, all the way through to having a good idea about what to get started on. So in summary, I've got 5 main bullet points here for you. Number 1, innovation leads to a step change in ideality beyond the current system's capability. Whichever definition of innovation you use, it must do that. Otherwise, it is simply improvement. Not that there's anything wrong with improvement, but I'm just saying it is improvement, not innovation. Ideality means more of the benefit or the value, less of the harm, and less of the cost. We should be very mindful of thinking about the unintended consequences. Innovation differs from improvement and aims to resolve contradictions that limit the current system's potential. If you want to learn more about contradictions, contradiction management, I recommend you investigate TRIZ as a methodology. Very, very interesting, very useful. Works in services now as well. It's good. When you fall into a moment of disorder, which may happen several times a day, consider which state the system is in, and therefore you can select the appropriate strategy for action, and don't run the risk of just defaulting to your preference style, which may not be the best one. And the 9 windows approach allows you to explore an issue from both an evolutionary point of view, the past through to the future, and a systemic perspective from the macro system through to the micro system. And then looking at those in the round, what you will be able to do is identify the most promising areas to develop on. Now, a couple of months back, a very dear colleague of ours, Dennis, ran a seminar, which is still available for you on our website, which was called Out of the Box Thinking to Drive Process Innovation. Recommend you go back to that and have a look at that if you're interested, because it goes through some of the details about what to do once you've selected and how to get creative with your thinking. So with that, I will finish up and pass you back to Rich.
Thanks, Sean. So thanks, folks. Again, thank you very much for helping to make that exercise a success. For those of you who've joined these before, you'll know we have now added our Leading Virtual Teams course to the public schedule. This has come straight from our in-house training schedule, and due to the resounding feedback and how positively that has been received, we've now put it into the public schedule. And we have one coming up in the not too distant future. Do check out the website pmi.co.uk/training to find out details there and book on. Just on that subject, for those of you in the UK will be aware it's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. One of the things as we do need to be mindful of when we're all, so many of us are working remotely and in different ways and in very tough environments, the importance of checking in with colleagues is more important than ever. And the simple question and the power of the question, are you okay, is one that we so easily miss in the day-to-day. And there's a link I'll put in the chat just now to the Mental Health Awareness Foundation as well, which has a whole load of resources which are really helpful. Thanks, Sean. If you just move to the next one. So finally, from us, you will receive the Voice of the Customer survey. Please do take the time to respond to that. It does inform our schedule going forward and helps us understand. We'd really like to hear your feedback today, given that the content and the approach was so different. So the schedule is available, as Sean mentioned. It's on the website with two upcoming now dates. Getting to grips with FMEA next week, so back into the tools before Brace for Impact at the end of the month. So all that remains to say is, on behalf of myself, Sean, and everyone at PMI, wherever you are in this troubled old world, have a safe and relaxing weekend. Thank you, folks, for joining us.
Bye.